From Mamma Mia, welcome to The Spill, your daily pop culture fix. I'm Laura Brodnick.
And I'm Ksenia Lukic.
And coming up on the show today, Kevin Federline is just about to release his highly anticipated new book, which is about his life, but mostly it is a huge tell-all about his marriage to Britney Spears. So we're going to go through the biggest bombshells that have come out so far. Also Britney's response, because she had shared some very heated responses to what he said. And a lot of their other family members have also become entangled in the story, including Jamie Lynn Spears, her little sister. There's some really intense stuff about her in the book, so we're going to unpack all that. But first, something a little bit lighter.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a slightly nicer, sort of lighter story. Forget a rom-com. Dua Lipa's fiancé, Callum Turner, has revealed the perfect meet cute, and it actually happened to him. So, in an interview with the Sunday Times, he revealed how he and Dua Lipa met. Strap in, guys, because this is romantic as hell. So, they met at a mutual friend's birthday party in LA, and they got to talking, and then they realized that they were reading the same book. They were reading Trust by Hernan Diaz, and Callum said, "Oh, I just finished the first chapter." And Dua Lipa responds with, "Oh my God, I just finished the first chapter too." And he comes back with the suavest line, "Oh, so we're on the same page." Mic drop.
He did think it was very romantic because in the Sunday Times article, he said that he is like, if you're in a movie, it would be the moment where you like look up to the heavens and say, "Oh my God, I'm going to marry this woman," which is very cute because they are now engaged.
I know, but the internet went a little bit crazy about this. Everyone was like, this is fan fiction. This is crazy. It's more romantic than some of the meet cutes in some of the best rom-coms, I think.
Yeah, some people got a bit intense with it because there was this idea they were going to a mutual friends event, so he knew she was going to be there. And she also has like a recommendations website and podcast, Service 95, because she was born in 1995 and she believes she was put on this earth to be of service. I feel like she's probably got too much going on, but she does love to do book recommendations. So people were like, did he possibly find out the book she was reading because she always posts what she's reading, and did he try and like, you know, read the same book so he'd have it in with her, which I would find very romantic, but I think it's probably not that intense.
I don't think so. Let's just leave it at the really nice romantic one. So the book that they were reading, I do want to like tell people about this book that they were reading because maybe we can try and recreate it for our listeners. So the book is called Trust by Hernan Diaz, and he's a Pulitzer Prize winning author. And the novel is about a financier in New York during the stock market crash of the 1920s, about him and his wife. So this is kind of, I don't know how romantic that is, but if you want to recreate it, you can go read that book.
Yeah.
Dua's also said in previous interviews that the two of them have had a number of like sliding doors moments. So it's not just this particular moment that is, you know, very rom-com-esque of them.
Yes. And I think the reason he's sharing this story now is that like he's out doing press for his new movie Eternity, which is a rom-com that is coming out very soon. And he has been an actor for a while. I'm sure people will be like, you know, he's not just Dua Lipa's fiancé. But for a while, that is all I and other people saw him as. But he is coming out in this movie they think is going to be like a real star-making turn for him. So it's called Eternity, and it's co-stars Elizabeth Olsen and Miles Teller, and then Callum Turner. And it's Elizabeth Olsen passes away, and then she gets to purgatory, and her husband that she was married to for decades is there. And so the idea is that they can now choose to go together into eternity, which is all great and romantic. But then her first husband shows up, who she was just married to very, very briefly before he was killed. And he has been waiting decades in purgatory for her to arrive so they can spend eternity together. But she can only go with one of them. So she has to go with, does she go with her first love, who she never got to have a life with, or does she go with the man she was married to for years? And the two men are played by Callum Turner and Miles Teller. And the hype for this movie is so, so big. I've got to say, out of all the movies, it's like this and Wicked are the two movies that I'm excited to see.
Okay, so this premise bothers me a little bit because
why is that?
Purgatory, if we're talking about like the history of hell and like purgatory is designed and was originally sort of placed as a place for non-believers to be put. So if you don't believe in God, that you go to purgatory. So the idea that someone's waiting there Like, what's the back? I'm confused of why they're in purgatory.
Well, I don't know if it's the traditional kind of like the way that Christianity has described purgatory. I don't think it's that. It's more so that there's like in this version, it's kind of like the Good Place, how you go in and have like your meeting and then you get assigned to where you're going. So it's like you come there and then they tell you you've died and then they give you a choice of where to go. And he's been hanging out with her in essentially the waiting room, more like the waiting room where you didn't decide
Limbo.
where you're going to go for eternity. Yeah. So then she goes on like dates with each one of them during like their time in limbo to see who she wants to spend the rest of her life with. And the chemistry between Callum Turner, Elizabeth Olsen and Miles Teller from this trailer is so good. Also that there's actual stakes. Like she can only pick one of them to spend eternity with.
Why have they been waiting there for so long? I don't understand. I'm confused. This movie is not doing it for me.
Oh, really? I think it's a pretty simple premise.
I don't know. There's something that bothers me about them just waiting for her to be there and then she
I'm sure you'll pick it up when you see the movie, but it's more of a rom-com than than anything else. But anyway, he's like Hollywood's new kind of rom-com leading man, and I think he's really leaning into this on the press tour, especially knowing that people love him and do it together. So I'm sure he's got all these cute stories that he's been like waiting to wheel out on his press tour, and I think it's working. People are obsessed with him.
It's definitely working. People love him and they seem very, very cute together. And I'm very offended that you don't like my purgatory.
We'll see when we see the movie. So Kevin Federline, former singer and backup dancer and reality TV star, but now most well-known for being Britney Spears' ex-husband and the father of her children, is this week releasing a tell-all book. So the book is called You Thought You Knew, and when he was talking about it, he was saying that it sort of charts his life from his teenage years and like his early life to him sort of breaking into the entertainment industry and things he experienced. But a lot of the book is dedicated to his relationship with Britney Spears, particularly the fallout after her mental health breakdown when she was placed under a conservatorship, and his marriage to his wife now, Victoria Prince, and his raising his children and being a father. And so he did a lot of press leading up to the book coming out, and there has been like a lot of chat around like why he's doing it and the bombshells that are coming out. But he keeps saying it's about him telling his side of the story because for so long he was known only as Britney Spears' husband.
It's unfair to assume that this is the first time he's being able to tell his story. Unlike Britney, who has been, muzzled for so many years. That to me feels like not a very valid reason. I want to kind of go a little bit back on their relationship history because I just want to refresh people's minds on who Kevin is because I've got some thoughts about him. Mm-hmm. So Kevin and Britney met in 2004 and then they got married 3 months later. Now, a lot of people may not remember, but Kevin was actually in a relationship with Shah Jackson, who he has 2 kids with. Now, Shah was pregnant with their second child when Kevin met Britney, and he left Shah for Britney. They were together for 3 months. Then they got married. Then Britney has Sean Preston in 2005 and Jaden James in September 2006. Britney files for divorce in 2006 as well. And then we get the kind of famous 2007 breakdown, mental health deterioration of Britney Spears. And then she's placed under the conservatorship. So my feelings on this are that Kevin has had a number of chances to speak out on his relationship with Britney, but he's doing it now. And, there are some definitely very big allegations that he's made about her.
Yes. And it's kind of interesting looking back on that now because I do have this memory of when Kevin and Britney first got together. And again, she was already such a tabloid sensation, but a lot obviously from her music, but from her relationship with Justin Timberlake. And when she first walked on a red carpet with Kevin Federline and they were like hugging and kissing, and there's all those ones of like where she's holding the tiny dog and they're doing the red carpet walks and people were like, who is this man? And surely it's not serious. Like she's just pulled this man out of like a lineup of dancers to kind of make Justin jealous. And then when they got married so quickly, that also made a huge amount of headlines. And one of the allegations that have come out in the book that Kevin Federline says is that like on the day of their wedding, she called Justin Timberlake for hours And he's like, now I should have seen that as a red flag that she wasn't over him. But at the time, I thought they just had unfinished business. So like he's kind of already dropping those like bombshells about their life, even from their wedding day.
So he was a backup dancer in Like I Love You, which is the Justin Timberlake music video. So they would have known each other.
Yeah, they're all in the same circles.
That's interesting that he flags that as a moment in their relationship. It's like almost putting all the onus back on her.
Yeah, I mean, and also I should say that we haven't, in the book is not in Australia in the time of recording, but there's a lot of excerpts out there and he's been doing a really huge press run. So all the information we have is coming from that. But what I've sort of pieced together from the excerpts that he's put out, the stories that he's been telling, is that he's really framing himself as like this kind of like good guy that just got really wrapped up in this situation with a woman he said he was in love with and wanted to start a family with. And then he just got swept away in like the fame and her mental health and the people around her. And that's why he ended up taking all of his children to Hawaii. So he has his children with Shah Jackson, who I believe they still live with her, but he like has custody of them. He also then had full-time custody of his 2 sons with Britney Spears. And then he and his new wife, Victoria Prince, also had children. So
6 kids, 3 women.
Yeah, exactly. And so he's kind of always been like, I'm the dad. But the part of that he doesn't mention as much is that Britney Spears was bankrolling that entire family. So she was paying obviously child support for the 2 sons and also paying Kevin like alimony and that was supporting him and his new wife Victoria. But obviously the kids are over 18 now, so the payments have stopped. And that's been the allegation that he's putting this book out now because the checks have stopped coming, which he's denied. He's like, the only reason I'm saying this now is that I want my story out there and I'm really worried for Britney Spears.
Yeah, I heard reports of $20,000 a month. Is that what you've seen as well?
Yeah, that was always the amount that was sort of put out there from the court docs that were made available.
So obviously Sean Preston and Jaden James are both over 18 now. So that alimony and that child support payment is all stopped now. So he's not getting any of that money anymore. He has said in other interviews that he's like, I don't really need it. I made, millions in this Super Bowl commercial that I did. I'm not doing this for the money. For me, I don't really believe that. That doesn't seem authentic to me personally.
Yeah.
One of the other allegations he makes, which I found quite shocking, he alleged that Britney was taking drugs while that she was breastfeeding. So he said that he walked into the dressing room at this album release party in 2006, and I'm going to quote here, found, quote, Britney and a young starlet friend snorting a fat line of coke off the table. They didn't even try to hide it. Then he goes on to say, please don't go home and breastfeed the kids like this. Call your mum or someone. We need to get the formula. You can't do this. That was the proverbial final straw, the breastfeeding thing, her reaction. That's what ended us. For me, the way that this is framed is, putting him as the nice guy and the good guy. He's the hero in this. And that is how he is framing himself.
Oh, yeah. A lot of stories and like all the big ones, like the excerpt that ran in the New York Times and the other chapters that have been put out are all stories that he's telling, but he's always recounting them through the eyes of his sons when they were very young and saying like either this happened to them as babies or this is something that they say that their mum did. Because he also said that he and Britney haven't spoken in like over a decade and that they only communicated through their legal teams before that and that she doesn't have a lot of contact with the kids. So these are all stories that he's saying that the kids told him that he's written to this book. There's one chapter where he says that they didn't want to go back to Britney Spears' house for their scheduled visit and they started telling their dad that they were too scared to be around her. And he said, my son said they would awaken sometimes at night to find Britney standing silently in the doorway, watching them sleep. Oh, you're awake, she'd say with a knife in her hand. And then she'd turn around and pad off without explanation. And he also says that the kids would say to him, like, Dad, I don't want to have a bath with Mum. She makes me bath with me. I'm uncomfortable when they were 10 years old. He'd also say that they just would be very, that she was being very emotional, that she was potentially taking substances, and also say that things like the house were a mess. And basically he's like recounting everything he says his sons have said to him to kind of put off having their scheduled visitation with her.
I don't doubt that, Britney was having some really severe mental health struggles during this time. I don't doubt that. I think what I have an issue with is the profiting off her problems and what was a very, very challenging time. And, you know, we look back at that time and there's been a lot of reflection on the way that media reported this particular breakdown of Britney, and that media went too far. They made it worse. You know, the shaving of her head, Britney's crazy. It was all of this discourse around her being insane and crazy. And that was all anyone was talking about. I don't doubt she had problems. She's clearly got some mental health issues. There are problems in her life. The way that he's talking about this, though, he's now utilizing the stories of his children to potentially like damage a relationship further between them and their mother.
Yeah, and I wonder if one of the reasons that he's leaning into this a bit is that there was a really good period of time where he was seen as like a bit of a hero and a father by people. Now people are sort of looking at him with questioning eyes. I think it was Nicki Minaj who tweeted the other day, like she subtweeted Britney and she's like, Kevin Federline when I find you kind of thing. Like now everyone's like, he's just profiting off his wife. But there was a time then where you'd see photos of Britney like walking through the streets, looking very distressed, like falling down on stage, not being able to like talk in interviews. And then you'd see these photos of Kevin Federline like walking quietly through the streets, holding the children, him saying he didn't want to do interviews, this idea that like he took his children away and they lived this quiet little life together. For a long time, that was really the story. And I think there was a lot of love from fans on his side. So I wonder if he thought if he came out with this book now, even though after the whole Free Britney movement, it does seem like the wrong move, if he kind of thought like, this is my moment. And he's been asked in a few different interviews, one about like the alimony payments, and he's saying, yes, I don't need the money. But the other reason he's saying that he chose to put the book out now with his son's blessing is that he said that he thinks the situation with Britney Spears has escalated to such a bad point that he had to ring the alarm, because he's like, I just don't want my children to have to go through the unimaginable. So he's kind of alluding to the fact that if someone doesn't step in with Britney Spears, then something terrible could happen to her.
I think if that were actually his intention, then he wouldn't be blasting it all over the world.
Yeah, I feel like if you were truly worried about someone's mental health and well-being, and you know that that person had in the past had, in their own words, had a very negative, bad mental health reaction to stories about them being in the press, people invading their personal life, then writing a book about them wouldn't be the way to get them help. So I don't think it's that at all. I'd probably have more respect for him if he said he just wanted the money, because at least that's like that's just a transaction.
I think as well, you also said they haven't spoken. So what are you sounding the alarm for? You haven't spoken to her in years. How do you know what she's doing?
Yeah,
all you're seeing is the social media, the same way that all of us are seeing.
I think he kind of picked his moment, and his publishers picked his moment, because there was a time right after the conservatorship had ended for Britney Spears and she married Sam Asghari, and there was this idea that, oh, now she gets to be the old Britney, and now she's had this fairy tale wedding and she's free, and everyone expected her to go back to being the pop star that she once was. And I think he probably knew that was the wrong time, because everyone was team Britney. But over time now, like, she's posting videos where she seems quite erratic. There's been all these reports that like she's being investigated because she's living in filth and disarray. Her marriage to Sam Asghari broke up and now he's gone off to be like an actor. It's interesting because when Kevin Federline was asked in his interviews about Sam, he was like, I don't know what kind of a man would ever marry a woman in that state. Like, he took advantage of her. And then Sam Asghari replied to him through another interview and he's like, well, he's a professional dad. That's all he knows how to do. So once that money train drives up, like, you should probably ask him what he's going to do, basically saying that he's doing it for the money. So even these two men are kind of like, they're having their infighting, which is causing more headlines against Britney Spears.
We really need to be careful. I do want to be very careful about analyzing someone's mental health, because I think it's more complicated than any of us are going to be able to understand. All we see is what she puts on social media. And I think from the outside, yes, it looks concerning. I mean, I would say that I feel concerned from some of the things that I see, but it's really hard to know what's actually going on with her mental health without actually being with her.
Yeah, and I just don't even know if there's anyone. That's all we're getting from this. It's like she's her ex-husband, and with the blessing of her sons, as far as we can see, have put out this tell-all memoir that is like literally dragging her name through the mud and is profiting off her. Her ex-husband only ever says lovely things about her, but at the same time still lived off her for many, many years. And even though he says he's not getting his like reality TV roles off her name, I kind of do think he mostly is. Like, I don't know if he'd be pulled onto all these shows and things if people weren't like, oh, but he was married to Britney Spears and we want to hear his story. Or her celebrity friends that were like like there for her wedding. I'm sure like Paris Hilton or Drew Barrymore or Selena Gomez, who had never met her before her wedding, I'm sure they all care about her, but I don't think that they're seeing her all the time. So it's like, she's estranged from her mum, she's estranged from her father, she's estranged from her brother and everyone else. She's cut off all her former managers and team because they were all making money off her.
Yeah.
It's like, I just don't think this woman has anyone around her. And it's kind of interesting when you think about like how the Free Britney movement led to that, because there's been some chapters come out from Kevin's book where he talks about it and he kind of slams it as a really dangerous thing. So in the book, this chapter that's been released, he talks about the first time that Britney was placed in an involuntary hold in a psychiatric unit. And he's like, it was one of the hardest nights of my life. I felt sick over what she was going through. This was someone I had loved, someone I had built a life with, the mother of my children. And when the conservatorship was placed on her and then the Free Britney movement started, which was the whole thing which started that conversation about the conservatorship ending, he said, I think the Free Britney movement started from a really good place, but all those people who put so much effort into that, they should now put the same energy into the Save Britney movement, because this is no longer about freedom, it's about survival.
She was in that conservatorship for 13 years. Which is an incredibly long time. The way that I see it is him trying to be the good guy again. I know I said that before, but for me, that is, he's not involved with her day-to-day life. You are trying to portray yourself as this wonderful man by saying, you know, you got to make sure that you're on Britney's side and save her, and, you know, I didn't want to see her in a conservatorship. Well, quite frankly, you're not supporting her in a way that someone who actually cared about her would. So I feel like I'm being quite critical of him, but I find it really, really poor timing, first of all. Both the kids have just turned 18.
Yeah, exactly.
We can't ignore that. And secondly, he's, you know, just trying to make money off her, like everybody around her has for their, you know, her entire life. She has responded to this.
So she has put out two different responses, at least to the, like, she always like talks a lot about her children and the way people around her are treating her. But when the news broke about Kevin's book and the first lot of extracts went out into the world and that story about her holding the knife came out, she responded through a rep who sent this statement to some of the news outlets who are running the story. And it said, with news from Kevin's book breaking, once again, he and the others are profiting off her. And sadly, it comes after child support has ended with Kevin. So she's flat out saying through her representative that she knows exactly why he's doing this. So she went on to say in that same statement, all she cares about are her kids, Sean Preston and Jaden James, and their well-being during this sensationalism. She has detailed her story in her own memoir, The Woman in Me.
Yeah, she actually mentions in her Instagram post too that she believes that Kevin's memoir is going to be selling more copies than hers ever did.
Yeah, I mean,
it was an interesting comparison,
that,
actually. I'm not sure if I buy that either.
Oh, no, I don't think it'll sell the same amount of copies. Like, that was explosive when that Britney book first came out. I'm sure a lot of people would buy this, but it's more so like even just the stories that are filtering out through the headlines are doing a lot of damage against her, because then she put out another statement on Twitter, and this came after the stories from her sons that Kevin was saying, my sons say they don't want to see her. They say that they felt unsafe. They say that their mother did all these things. And in response to that, Britney posted this from her own account, so you have to assume it's her writing it. And she said, the constant gaslighting from my ex-husband is extremely hurtful and exhausting. I have always pleaded and screamed to have a life with my boys. Relationships with teenage boys are complex. I have felt demoralized by this situation and have always asked and also begged them to be part of my life. Sadly, they have always witnessed the lack of respect shown by their father for me. They need to take responsibility for themselves. With one son only seeing me for 45 minutes in the past 5 years and the other only 4 visits in the past 5 years. And this is interesting because I've never seen her say anything like this publicly about her sons before. She went on to say, I have pride too. From now on, I will let them know when I am available. Trust me, those white lies in that book, they are going straight to the bank, and I am the only one who gets genuinely hurt here. I will always love them, and if you really know me, you won't pay attention to the tabloids about my mental health and drinking. I am actually a pretty intelligent woman who's been trying to live a sacred and private life for the past 5 years. I speak on this because I've had enough, and any real woman would do the same.
Do you know what the key thing for me from that whole statement was? White lies. White lies is a very odd choice of words. And she didn't just say lies, white lies.
Yeah, it kind of makes it seem like it's not a huge lie.
Yeah, it's that to me insinuates a really small lie, something minor and inconsequential. But that's not what these lies are saying. These are really big allegations.
And it's also interesting that she's pointing out the facts that it's almost like she's trying to say like some of the stories in the book couldn't have happened because she hasn't spent any time with her sons over the past 5 years when they would have been in those teenage years. And also saying that it's the first kind of stance she's like taken against her sons by saying like by speaking to them via the media and via the public and saying like, I'm not going to stand for this anymore. And basically saying like, I'll let you know when I want to see you. I don't want to see you anymore because you've taken your father's side essentially.
That's hard. That's really tricky because these kids have had a pretty rough upbringing, growing up in that environment, having all of these things said about their mother, not having a relationship with her.
Yeah, I think the thing to remember with this is like we feel like we know so much about this situation because it's been documented so heavily in the press cycles for over 20 years. And we've had Britney Spears' full tell-all book, which went so in depth in her life with Kevin and the kids. And now we've got Kevin Federline's book, which goes so in depth on what his kids are saying. But I think we're still only getting like little tiny glimpses of the actual story because it kind of feels like so much worse happened that they're not detailing, or it's so much more complicated between their children and them. But neither of them, they've both cherry picked the stories where, because I'm sure Britney did it too. Like she's cherry picked stories. Like if you read her memoir, and I'm sure a lot of it's true, and like it's your point of view, but in her memoir, like she's desperately trying to look after her kids, and she's a good mother. And then Kevin's story is that he was desperately trying to protect his kids from this crazy woman, and I'm sure both of them believe that is the truth.
Well, yeah, there's human nature is to protect yourself and portray yourself in the most positive light. And memory is a funny thing. One person's memory of a situation will be completely different to another, and it's not an accurate representation of what actually happened. So I'm sure that they both believe that's the truth, but we're not really going to know. But for me, at the end of the day, she's clearly very upset about this. He is making money off it. I would love to hear from the boys directly.
But I don't even know if they would be, because they would, you're so influenced, especially at that age, by what they've heard from their father over the years, or what they've heard from their mother, or what they've heard from, they were very close to their grandfather, Jamie Spears, who Britney alleges was like the mastermind and did the worst things to her and was the one keeping her in conservatorship. But they were really close and there was a falling out with them. So I just think there's so many layers of family complication here. And the thing about the Britney Spears story, which always makes every part of it so hard to believe anything or to trust anyone in this narrative. It's like everyone in this narrative is an unreliable narrator because you've got to trace the money and they're all profiting off her in some way. Every single person involved in that conservatorship on both sides was profiting off her. She was paying the legal fees on both sides. Everyone who works in that house is somehow like tied to her for their income. Like her ex-husband, like Sam, like he was tied to her for income. Kevin Federline and all his ex-wives and children are all tied to her. All her like other family, like her mum was getting money, like a salary from her estate. So was her dad. So was her sister. Oh, that's the other thing. There's text from Jamie Lynn Spears in the book, who has always said that she was not involved in the conservatorship. She's like, I was a child. I tried to help my sister. I've always tried to help her. But then there are these texts in the book that Kevin Federline says Jamie Lynn Spears sent to his wife, Victoria Prince. And in them, she's basically like siding with Kevin. So he's obviously been sitting on these for a long time and he's decided to drop them in the book to kind of like say like even her family agrees with me.
This is so low for me.
So the text that he has said, and I haven't seen Jamie Lynn Spears comment on this yet, but it is like in the printed version of the book. So he must have felt like they must have verified that these text messages came from her. And so this text message from Jamie Lynn Spears to Kevin and Victoria says, honestly, this makes me want to cry because I feel for those boys so much. I'm her little sister by 10 years and I can't imagine what her actual children must feel like. But I am familiar with the feeling of being a dinghy trying to survive alive in a wave caused by another ship, feeling like you have to rescue yourself. And then went on to say that she feels that her sister was incapable of ever taking accountability for the circumstances she was in. And then she also went on to say, I'm sure my sister never thanked you all for raising her children and still being beyond gracious to allow her so many chances to take part in their lives. Even when you all, because that's how Jamie Lynn Spears, that's how the text is written, even when you all had more than enough reason to validate cutting her off. So I wanted you to know how much you are appreciated and supported by those of us who love those boys. So basically she's saying
I hate that so much.
It's also hard to, like, that's only a sampling of text messages. Like, it's hard to know what the whole exchange was. But basically it is quite damning that, like, Kevin's put this whole story outline out, this whole narrative of Britney Spears being a dangerous mother. And then her sons have said that, yes, that's what's happened. And he's putting all the words in his son's mouth. And then he has her sister also in the book, like her own words, saying, my sister is, you know, not a good person to be around. I felt this and she should thank you for raising her children because she was incapable of doing it.
It feels so calculated. It's like, oh, I've held on to this for 10 years, 15 years, and now I'm going to show everybody, your sister doesn't even like you. This is what she said about you. Your kids don't like you. This is what they said about you. It's just so calculated, and I'm getting very upset about it. I find it so upsetting.
Yeah.
I really find it upsetting. You know, the way that people have profited off her and, you know, allegedly the manipulation that happened around that conservatorship of making her work by sort of dangling her, visiting her children in front of her, or saying, if you do this, we'll let you do this. Like, the way that she was controlled so much in that 13 years, you know, I think that some of her behavior since 2021 is a reaction to being able to make her own decisions finally. But now there's this, and it was all so messy. And very, very upsetting.
And I feel like this will villainize Jamie Lynn Spears even more, because when Britney's book came out and when Jamie Lynn Spears' own book came out, she received a huge amount of backlash because people thought that because her signature was on some of the conservatorship papers, so that kind of negated her story that she'd always told, that she wasn't involved in it, even though now she says she wasn't involved to the extent people thought she was. And the thing is too, like, she also had like a horrific childhood where she was like set up to be Nickelodeon's big, you know, new golden girl, and then got pregnant as a young teenager, and then was basically like taken to a cabin in the woods and locked up by like her family and Nickelodeon officials, allegedly, she says. That's like all detailed in her book, and was like almost forced to give up her child, which she decided not to, and lost her career. So like there's a lot of there's a huge story on that side as well. But basically, like, her income has always been tied to Britney Spears in many ways as well, in terms of like she was the breadwinner of the family when she was a child. So it's really hard to trust anyone. I really think the only way out of this is to have someone come into Britney Spears' life who is not financially dependent on her at all.
She can't trust anyone. Like, can you imagine your whole life? Everybody, you can't trust anybody because everybody around you, their livelihood is dependent on you making money. You can't trust anyone. She can't trust anyone.
Yeah, so I think
no one has given her that safe place. No one in her life.
Yeah, so I think we're going to – so Kevin Federline's book is coming out this week. It feels like we've got so much out of it, but like the full book isn't even out in the world yet. So that's coming. So I'm sure there's going to be even more damning stories in there about Britney Spears. I'm sure she'll respond again. All eyes are on her now. So anytime she posts a video from her home, there's all these allegations of her mental health and these calls from fans now. They say a lot of people who were in the Free Britney movement are now calling for her to like have some sort of like hold put over her or something to sort of, again, because she doesn't look like that perfect pop star that people thought she was going to look. So it's a very complex situation. And unfortunately, I think in the next week it is going to escalate quite a bit.
Yeah, I think there's more to come in the story.